When you think about the fall of Rome, you probably picture barbarians at the gates or emperors being poisoned in marble palaces. But empires don't just crumble from outside attacks. They rot from within. And one of the most corrosive forces is always money. Rome didn't just fall because of invasions. It fell because its currency collapsed. And the lessons from that collapse still apply to every modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Let's set the stage. For centuries, Rome's economic backbone was the silver denarius, first minted around 211 BC. It was nearly pure silver, trusted across the entire empire. Roman soldiers were paid in it, merchants demanded it, and ordinary people stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just money. It was confidence in metal form. But running an empire is expensive. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was stretched thin, defending its borders and financing wars. Tax revenues couldn't keep up with military costs. So, emperors turned to an age-old debasement. Instead of taxing citizens more, which is always unpopular, they just reduced the silver content in the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Under Emperor Augustus, the denarius was about 95% silver. By the reign of Caracalla, it had dropped to around 50%. And by the mid-3rd century, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. A coin once made of solid metal had become a disc of bronze coated with a silver wash. The people could see and feel the difference. And what followed? Inflation. Prices skyrocketed because the money was no longer anchored to real value. A measure of wheat that once cost a single denarius might suddenly cost dozens. This wasn't some abstract theory. It destroyed the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay, and merchants stopped accepting the debased coins, preferring to barter instead. It was a vicious cycle. The more confidence eroded, the more emperors struck cheaper coins, hoping volume would replace value. The chaos peaked during the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome suffered nearly 50 years of invasions, plagues, civil wars, and total economic collapse. One emperor, Diocletian, tried to stop the bleeding. In 301 AD, he issued an edict fixing the prices of over 1,000 goods and services. The penalty for violating it, death. But it was a disaster. You can't control prices by law when the money itself is worthless. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius altogether. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a pure gold coin that restored some stability. But by then, the Western Empire was already fatally weakened. The debasement of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. What does this mean for us today? It means that the destruction of money is always the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could trick its people by issuing coins that looked the same but contained less real value. Modern governments think they can do the same by printing paper, manipulating interest rates, or inflating away debts. History didn't stop teaching after Rome. After World War I, Germany printed marks to cover its debts. By 1923, a loaf of bread cost over 200 billion marks. People carted their wages home in wheel. In the early 2000s, Zimbabwe's government turned to the printing press, and by 2008, inflation reached a mind-bending 89.7 sextillion%. The government eventually just abandoned its own currency. But you don't have to look at the extremes. Even in modern economies, the Roman pattern lives on. In 1971, the US dollar was taken off the gold standard, severing its last link to a tangible anchor. Since then, the dollar has become a fiat currency, backed only by trust in the government. And just like in Rome, the temptation to spend beyond its means has been irresistible. A dollar in 1971 could buy what takes more than $6 today. The bills look the same, but the value has been hollowed out. The trick is always the same. Governments disguise inflation as growth. They tell you that higher wages mean prosperity, even as your costs rise faster. They pretend nothing fundamental has changed, while quietly extracting value from every paycheck. So what should you take away from this? First, understand that inflation isn't an accident. It's a policy. Second, realize that real wealth is found in assets that hold value when money does not. Land, skills, productive businesses. And third, never assume stability is permanent. The Romans would have laughed if you told them their coins would one day be worthless. The fall of Rome reminds us that when money stops being real, society itself begins to unravel. The barbarians at the gate may finish the job, but the real killer is always inside the treasury. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.